If I sound different, that's because I got sick while I was writing the script for this video, so sorry. What is Dusk is a question I've been asked countless times this year, and that doesn't surprise me. Small game being built by one guy under a small publisher. It's gonna fly under most people's radars. Instead of trying to explain myself each time, I'd like to collect my thoughts into a semi-organized video. In short, Dusk is the most fun I've had with a first-person shooter. Period. I've played a lot of shooters over the years. Too many to count, and there are strong contenders of course, but I enjoy Dusk the most. Dusk is a shining example of how to create an accessible arena shooter without sacrificing advanced movement or the exhilaration of strafe jumping around the arena. It's backed up by incredible level design, environmental storytelling, enemy concepts, and everything else that makes an exceptional shooter. Let's explore the brilliance of this game and why I think it's criminal that it isn't more popular. I'm Liam Triforce, and I'd like to welcome you to my favorite first-person shooter of all time, Dusk. Before I even start discussing anything about the game itself, I gotta sit through the boot screen. So this is actually how the game loads. Every single time you open the game, this happens. A clever throwback to the DOS days to mask the game loading in assets each time. This is but one way Dusk channels nostalgia to draw you in, but it does more than just feed off of your fond memories playing Doom, Quake, or insert beloved shooter here. Now I've just started the game and Dusk's first level does enough to earn my respect. The first thing you hear as the title sequence fades out is the sound of something getting impaled. As the level fades in, you discover that it was actually your character that got skewered. You then have to react quickly as three bloodthirsty rednecks charge at you with chainsaws. You yourself are also a bloodthirsty redneck, armed with two sickles. In this one moment, the game has you make instinctive decisions that inadvertently teach you about the game's core design. In order to kill them, you have to get close, but if you get close, you risk getting torn to shreds. Therefore, the game subtly implies that constant movement is an absolute must. Conversely, if you're resourceful, you might move these barrels and find a secret hidey hole with a pistol inside, allowing you to take care of the leathernecks without taking any damage. Or if you like to live dangerously, or you just don't want to kill anyone, you could speed for the exit to get yourself out of there and start looking for resources. In this one moment, various elements are subtly presented to the player, and these elements are constantly improved upon until the credits roll. Let's look at each element and how they contribute to Dusk as a whole. Movement is perhaps Dusk's strongest asset, and for good reason. If you've played Quake before, you'll know what strafe jumping is. You hold forward and a strafe key at the same time, continuously jump, and turn the mouse in the direction you want to go, while simultaneously alternating strafe keys to keep your speed up. Dusk has strafe jumping, except it's much easier to manage. In fact, it's perfect here because it's way more accessible. All you have to do is hold forward and one of the strafe keys while continuously jumping. If you hit a wall, you won't be stopped. You can even jump up slanted walls. This doesn't take any skill out of performing a strafe jump, however. It's still tough to strafe jump and kill things at the same time. You can still get hit if you're not careful enough. The game constantly encourages this technique and wants you to use it as much as possible. It can get you out of intense situations where projectiles are flying everywhere. It's beautiful, and its ease of access revolutionizes the way people are introduced to arena shooters. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can grasp this method of movement within a matter of minutes. It takes practice, but it's more fun to practice with due to its leniency. This ties into the satisfying nature of combat overall. Dusk's weapons don't initially make a lasting impression. They're common among shooters, but they feel good to use. Enemies may force you to think tactically and choose your weapons carefully. What I find most compelling about the weapons in this game is how they're tied to movement. For starters, the hunting rifle doesn't exactly have a great spread, however it packs a powerful punch. When you first uncover the hunting rifle, enemies start swarming you from below. You're given a chance to improve your aim while remaining stationary. This kind of comfort won't last with the weapon though. As previously mentioned, constant movement is a must, so if you want to use the hunting rifle, you need to use it while hopping around. Doing this effectively will take practice, as it involves lining your reticle up with enemies as you're moving. But once you get the hang of it, the hunting rifle will become a valuable asset. This becomes apparent as you attempt to deal with enemies in E2M1. These connected structures and launch pads provide you with a playground to practice your aiming on the move, while enemies bombard you with shots. Weapons being tied to movement is the reason some of the weapons are so satisfying to use. Bouncing around using splash damage with the Riveter, hovering with the crossbow, which is actually taught to you in episode 3. Accuracy and movement are the two keys to surviving encounters. An unusual combination, but a necessity here. Not to mention, they work really fucking well together. And the game also conditions you to these things through its progression and enemy design. In episode 1, most enemies move slowly, however the tricky part is dealing with their attack speeds. For example, the possessed goats are slow and they don't take much effort to kill, but they'll spit blood at the player quickly. Other enemies like the scarecrows and witches are stronger, and their attacks deal more damage in an attempt to incentivize dodging attacks, rather than tanking them. Enemies continue to become more versatile as you progress. Welders launch homing missiles and explode upon death. Massive red mages will tank your bullets and launch bigger fireballs. And I need to mention some of the brilliant ways the game introduces you to enemies. E2M2. You enter a dark, silent, helpless pit. You can only see what your flashlight can see. You receive a warning written in blood. Don't trust your eyes. As you explore the mine, you hear the breathing of an animal. It's breathing down your neck. You react. This is the Wendigo. And it's not just a terrifying enemy to deal with. Its practical implementation makes it one of the most intelligent enemies in the game. This Inviso Moose manages to sneak past other enemies in hordes, keeping you on your toes at all times. Disturbing yet tough enemies are not in short supply in Dusk. Here's a boss from episode 2 named Mama. Her design is nothing short of unsettling. She looks like an experiment gone wrong, and her odd moans and the sounds of rusted metal she makes as she attacks add to that feeling. She bends over and fires ridiculously fast explosives that deal a crazy amount of damage, even if you have morale stacked up. On top of that, the terrain you have to traverse is all broken up, making movement a lot more difficult. She isn't just a boss though. She becomes a regular enemy immediately after, and she makes things pretty hectic. But it's hard to compare with some of the enemies you meet in episode 3. In the Crypt of Flesh, you'll hear moaning from a locked door. Once you unlock it, you'll make your way down the stairs and this creepy fuck will storm out. I don't know where to begin with this enemy. It's not too difficult to deal with, but its speed and attack strength both overwhelm you. It also doesn't help that its face and the noises it makes are both nightmarish. What are they? Why are they like this? The concepts Dusk explored throughout made me deeply intrigued in the cult I was up against. What are they plotting? How did things turn out like this? And at the end of the level, when you think you're free, you're not. I don't know how to describe these enemies without butchering their impact, but just take a look at what they're doing. They're effective enemies, no doubt about that. Episode 3 goes balls to the wall with enemy design. With caged doggos that charge at you, flying things, sword-wielding things, the enemy design present in Episode 3 will attempt to overwhelm you, and that's appropriate for the climax of the game. The overall experience conditions you to the movement, weaponry, and enemies perfectly, so that by the time you encounter a relentless enemy gauntlet at the end of the game, you're more than ready. Bosses prepare you for more advanced encounters as well, whether that be through the Intoxicator's powerful acid, the aforementioned tricky maneuvering with Mama, or the aggression shown by the twins. Bosses are definitely the highlight of tricky encounters in Dusk. They're also some of the highlights of the entire game. The finale of Episode 2 introduces you to the Guardian, the most aggressive boss up to this point. He attacks using explosives and can only be killed off by using exorbitant amounts of firepower. Scattered throughout the level are 4 switches. Once you teleport around and trigger all 4, a fast fire totem will appear in the center. Pair that with the Riveter and a bunch of missiles, and prepare to blow a load. Of course, this isn't the only thing you do to finish him off, but it is a highly encouraged part of the process, and that's just wonderful. This game never misses a beat when it comes to combat, even including a boss that's fought entirely underwater. And Big John! I think Little Neck deserves the spotlight here. This dude is giving it all despite his size. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. The final boss is perhaps the best way they could have challenged you on your mastery of the mechanics. The leader of the cult happens to be strafe jumping around the arena just like you've been doing over the course of the game. Aside from having a shitload of health, he doesn't have any special abilities. He has the same arsenal as you. This makes for an excellent bridge into the game's multiplayer component, and a great test of just how nimble and accurate you are. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the actual final boss, the Lovecraftian beast commanding the cult, is a combination of mastering movement and problem solving. As you search for the next crack of dawn to shine down on it, you also have to avoid its swinging arms by constantly switching launch pads. It's a really cool final boss. And yet, in the end, the beast still takes control. You don't actually kill it. That begs the question, what about the other bosses? Do I really have to kill them? Well, the leader of the cult can actually be finished off by his own disciples once you lower his health to a certain point. How deep does this go? Actually, you don't have to kill a single enemy to beat Dusk. Most levels can be solved without firing a single bullet, and every boss can be avoided using puzzle solving or resourcefulness. Pacifism isn't just a novel way of replaying the game though. It means that if you're having trouble with a boss, there's always an alternative method of dealing with them. Not a skip a boss button like the concepts I've lambasted in the past, but an alternative challenge. It's not like you can walk away from the Guardian, you have to keep him away from you as you figure out the combination for the portal. Escaping from the Son of Intoxicator isn't easy because as you try to do so, the twins will spawn. This isn't a mindless thing, it gives you another way out. Remember that enemy gauntlet? Well, there's another way around it if you're playing passively. You just have to figure it out. Pacifism in Dusk is brilliant, and this brings us to the fantastic level design and exploration at play in the game. Dusk has some of the best levels I've ever seen in a shooter. It gently eases you in as you exit the House of the Leathernecks. One of Dusk's many strengths is creating levels that appear small, but become much more complex as you dig deeper. The level Old Time Religion is a perfect example of this. At first, all you can see is a church and a graveyard, but you can go underground to discover how each area is connected. This is a theme in the level design of Dusk, and it never gets old. This is expanded upon in Dead of the Night, Erebus, and more. Wide open arenas with an assortment of buildings and different doors that you have to put the pieces together to open. I love levels like these. They take what makes non-linear levels in shooters that inspired Dusk fun, and create some of the most enthralling levels I've ever played through in a shooter. In addition, there's a healthy amount of claustrophobia and maze-like level design throughout, which is further enhanced by this game's foreboding atmosphere. It's an achievement when not a single level manages to escape my memory. The Escher Labs constantly fuck with you through ever-changing level design, manipulation of time, warping to the inside of a monster and having all music cease, the boss fight with Mama, and the lack of gravity at the end. Episode 3 probably has the most consistently excellent level design that exemplifies why this game is so good at everything it does. You'll go through a sprawling church as the game properly introduces you to the power of the sword, but you could use it beforehand if you were resourceful. You'll swim through lava and traverse what seems to be the core of the earth, but then you'll come up for a breather and find yourself caught in a snowstorm with a new threatening type of enemy. I was in awe of the daunting, rich, maze-like design of the City of Shadows, and I was excited when I eventually flooded it and escaped. The Crypt of Flesh terrified me thanks to its clever use of shadows, disturbing enemies, claustrophobic tunnels, and absolutely haunting music and visuals. I was floored when a tornado completely destroyed the cathedral where I was fighting off enemies, and in the next level I walked past some writing that said "Welcome back." I was being taken back through previous scenarios. I was endlessly intrigued by this, and I was also introduced to crazy level concepts at the same time. Stacking fast fire totems to shoot ridiculously quick, alternating the direction of gravity to drift through the level and traverse obstacles in different ways, Dusk never lets up. Speaking of traveling back through levels, how about we discuss this game's take on storytelling? Very rarely does Dusk deliberately halt you for story purposes. Its overall narrative is presented through writings on the walls, enemy design as I've discussed, and levels. Common in FPS games of the past, not so common today. Not even the Doom reboot got this right, as it contained long, drawn-out segments where Samuel Hayden would spout exposition at you. It's refreshing to play an FPS where storytelling feels organic and never attempts to interrupt your experience without reason. The immediate concept is simple. Demonic, murderous cult wants you to either convert or die, but it's how they explore that concept that makes it so intriguing. The experiments they carry out demonstrate how fucked up they are. The weird horses, the meat grinders, the disturbing unknown nature of the things in the Crypt of Flesh. You get the drift. They're not just an odd cult, they're depraved monsters. But in the level Homecoming, the game implies something rather interesting about the character you control. The game brings you back home. No enemies around, somber music playing, and upon interacting with the pictures on the wall, the message "It hurts to remember" flashes on screen. Then in the next level, as you travel through different scenarios once again, in the end you find yourself back at the very beginning. Memories dry and crumble, and then you hook yourself. I don't know if I want to put my interpretation of these events out there, because I'd rather people decipher the meaning of these events themselves. But there's one line in the graphic novel that hints towards the purpose of all this. Who you were is insignificant. Who you will become is inconceivable. How does that tie to the pictures on the wall? How does it tie to those writings? Could it mean you're no more innocent than the cult? What happened before the events of the game? I can't really say for certain, and it's intentionally left that way. All that's left is to prove you're worthy to the evil echoing inside your head. But the game ends with the Lovecraftian beast bestowing his power unto you. So what's going to happen next? How will you use the power? Are you doomed, or is this only the beginning? The credits roll. All we can do is piece it together ourselves, and that is rare in games nowadays. My hat goes off to David for telling the story like this, it's commendable. You don't have the answer in the end, all you have are clues. Are you the bad guy? I don't know, are you? Yeah, Dusk did that. Dusk continued to blow my fucking mind like that. It does more with comparatively less. And this is true with the visuals too. It's intentionally low poly and compressed to look like the late 90s games we all know and love. But the fidelity capable in Unity allowed for some beautiful levels. It's awesome that I can look at Dusk's graphics and be legitimately impressed with how they handle its environments. But that's the power of art direction. And when it comes to presentation, you can't go wrong with the stellar soundtrack by Andrew Hulshult. This is definitely his best work. So many different songs, sometimes badass, sometimes haunting, but always perfect for every scenario the game throws at you. And I've played some examples for you already. Everything I've mentioned blends together to create a tightly designed shooter in every aspect. Oh, and I did mention there was a multiplayer component, right? The people at New Blood Interactive managed to get a multiplayer component off the ground and tie it to an already kick-ass game. Thanks to Dusk's accessible controls and mechanics, a single campaign run should be enough to prepare you for the insanity that is free-for-all Dusk World. I don't think I can properly address the adrenaline rush I experience as I strafe jump around arenas in Dusk World. It's like Quake if movement was uninhibited. When you have a lobby full of people going as fast as you, bullets flying everywhere, and with diverse maps that encourage crazy movement, Dusk World proves to be the fastest and most enjoyable multiplayer shooter I've ever played. I like it more than its direct inspirations by far. I remember Tim Willett saying at E3 that Quake Champions was the fastest multiplayer shooter around. Oh Tim, how wrong you were. If you're new to the game and you'd like to play Dusk World with me, I'm almost always playing on Frag Night, which is every Saturday night at 9 PM Eastern Standard Time. I hope you make some friends, jib your enemies, and overall, I hope you have a good time. Who am I kidding though? You will. There's not a single thing I can criticize about Dusk. It's truly a miracle that this game exists. It not only streamlines mechanics for people that have never played arena shooters, but also creates something totally enthralling for fans of that same genre. Dusk is a marvelous achievement in FPS design. From start to finish. It conditions you to its insane movement through its enemies and weapons, it experiments with new ideas while solidifying old ones, and its level design is truly some of the best I've seen in a shooter. Environmental storytelling lets you interpret the narrative on your own, the visuals do more with less, the music is impactful and well-rounded. I haven't even mentioned the fact that you can cook meat on an open fire and gain health, or use a bar of soap to kill a boss. This game is also a ridiculous immersive sim, and to top it all off, it's only $20. What can I say other than play Dusk? Enjoy Dusk. Live Moss. Thanks to David and the New Bloods for giving the world this masterclass in FPS design. And David, I hope that Lavender enjoys this when she's old enough to play it. But I know she will. You totally knocked it out of the park here. That's all I have to say for now. I've been Liam Triforce, and I'd like to thank you for watching. But what are you doing still watching? Go buy Dusk. Play it. What are you doing not playing it right now? Play it!